so excited and so happy. You have all made me stronger from the broken place. Thank you. I'm done.
And this is Bob Giacin. Please give him a round.
Thank you. I feel like this is my wedding night. I know why I'm here. I don't know if I can perform. Okay? There are some giveaways of the map of downtown Hollywood in 1926, along with a legend as to the different locations that I identified. There's also one of our famous friends that used to be a visitor every night downtown. It's called the water bug. Okay, 2-inch long. They'd fly in as soon as the lights went on and the darkness hit, and they would devour the street. Everybody would run over the bugs along with the land crabs. And we'd have such a stink that you couldn't believe it. The city used to send out their wash people. We didn't have a wash machine like you have today, a street sweeper. But it was really an interesting time. So take what you want. There are other pictures over there, some going back to the day when Joseph Young got started. And that was given to me by my friend Richard Stonoff, whose family basically was here well before Joseph Young and sold Young the property. So I want to thank the Hollywood Historical Society and Victor for opening his home. It's very nice of them to do that. Many people don't know this, but the Historical Society ownership through the city of the Hammerstein facility is a direct result of Victor getting it given to the city. If it wasn't for him, it would have gone to some stranger. Okay? Okay. I mentioned something about Stonoff. He lives down the street from me, and his parents and aunt owned the property where South Broward High School is, and where the, do you remember the automobile dealership at the corner of Sheridan and US 1? He owned that, the parents owned that, plus gobs of other property. So he's well known to Hollywood, okay? In addition to my friend, I have my other friend of 57 years. I'm very proud to have you with me. Thank you, Kay. Kay came over from Germany when she was 16 years old. She came over because she was told that the United States of America had gold running down the stream, chocolate bars hanging from the trees, and everybody had kugami.
Kugami.
What is kugami? Who's German in here? Anybody know German?
I'm half, but I have no idea what that is.
Kugami? Am I pronouncing it right? Kugami. Everybody had chewing gum over here. You didn't have it over there.
Cowgummy. Cowgummy.
Okay, don't technical. Okay. Like many 16-year-old ladies, you had a coming out. You remember those days when you were 16 and you had the social and you had your nice dress and the big thing? Well, this is my coming out too. Okay? Even though I was very comfortable in my environment, I was forced out. I was told it's time to be out and look at the world. That bright light when I came out was just disgusting. I was so comfortable inside my mother's womb. And there was Dr. McClory. Who else was born here in Hollywood? Somebody else was. Dr. McClory, Elbert McClory. He lived around on the other side of this lake, I believe, on a point. Okay? So I was declared to be the first baby of the year of 1939. So our population went from 5,000 to 5,001. My parents lived in a Coral Rock home located on Polk Street, just before you get to 24th Avenue. The house is on the right-hand side, pure Coral Rock, and we were staying in there for about one more year, and then we moved over across the street to where the Burger King is and the Montessori school is. There was some cabins back up in there, so he moved into there, and then finally located on Hollywood Boulevard, where my office building is, 2100 block, and built a two-story apartment building where we lived. My father was in the tile business. He did probably the majority of the homes around here, tile work, okay? He did a lot of the work for those guys, okay? And the location had, I think it was 8 or 10 apartments, his tile business, and a chicken farm. We had thousands of chickens. We had 500 rabbits. We had a half an acre of papaya trees. And every Saturday and Sunday, the people from the surrounding area, north and south, would come over there and they got their fresh chickens. Chickens back then were 9 cents a pound. Wow. They would say, I'd like to have that chicken, so I would run out there and I'd grab that chicken. I'd go over to a telephone pole that was cut off, I took my meat cleaver, chopped off his head, let it loose to run around, blow out the blood, and finally pick him up, dip him in the water to pull the chicken, the feathers off. Yeah, just like you're eating now, right? And then during the day, my brother, who was 7 years older than I, we would go into the chicken coops and take out the eggs, wash them, candle them, and we would crate them. And on Saturdays and Sundays, my mother would put me into the car. In the back seat of the car were dozens and dozens of eggs. We'd go down A1A, and my mother would say, upstairs at place number 201, they want 2 dozen eggs, it's 22 cents. Okay, I'd go up there, give them the eggs, the lady would give me 2 dimes, I'd come down, I give it to my mother, she says, where's the 2 cents? You go back up and get the 2 cents. That was 10% of her profit. Okay? At the same time that we had the chicken farm, we had nightly visitors. Not every night, but occasionally. Once, twice a week. And they would come in when it was nice and dark, 9, 10 o'clock, and you hear the chickens go wild. My father and I and my mother, we lived upstairs with my brother, and once we heard the chickens going wild, we'd run out there. My father had a flashlight, shine it down there, and there were the cougars. Generally 2 or 3 at a time. They would take their hand and rip open the chicken coop wire, grab a chicken in her mouth, and then proceed to run down Polk Street, all the way down past 28th Avenue, jump over the railroad track, there was no 95 then, and back where the Knights of Columbus Hall is where they would have their sanctuary. They would consider chickens. This one time, my father got the head start on them, and they put a little trap door so that when they approached, it would go off and set off a light upstairs, and then it would enable us to come out in advance before they could do their thing and disappear. And he had a shotgun, never would hurt the animals, never believed in killing. We'd shoot it in the air to scare them off. In the meantime, this one cougar had the thing in his mouth, and he turned up and he went, ah. Clearly remember that. And my father put the light on him, like he could jump the 10 feet to get up on top if he wanted to. But ultimately they would all take off and run down Polk Street. We had, let's go here. Okay, who remembers Dunham's? Anybody remember Dunham's grocery store? Dunham's, right? Dunham's grocery store was located at the corner of 24th Avenue and Taylor Street.
Still there.
It's, yeah, under a Spanish name now. Yeah, right. And I used to go up and down Hollywood Boulevard as a kid, and I would collect Coke bottles, all right? And then I would go to my mother and I'd say, I'm going to bring the Coke bottles to Dunham's to get my 2 cents, okay? And I would have to ask permission. And she says, okay, you can go there, but don't go past Dunham's. I said, why, Mom? It's nice open fields out there. And he said, they'll eat you. The cougars, they'll eat you. So you don't want to go past there, okay? As I showed you before, the bugs and the crabs, trust me, we talked thousands and thousands of them would come out every night. Every night they'd be run over, and the next night there were more there. They were coming primarily from the Diplomat Parkway area, which was full of land crab holes. Okay? And I remember with the firecrackers, we used to go to the crabs, and they would sit there at their hole, and they'd put their fingers up like that, right? You know? I'd say, okay, and I'd hand a lighted one to them, and they'd run down the hole. I put my foot over the hole, and it blew out. Crabs always had an escape hatch. They go right out the other end. Okay? In the early 40s, I went to the local outdoor school. The local outdoor school was located at 23rd and Polk Street. It was owned by Joan's mother, Lamora Michelson. I have pictures of the place here along with 3 other friends. Charles Hoffman, whose father was the president of the First National Bank, and then Sharon Slater. Remember L.B. Slater? Slats Slater? And so there's a picture of the 3 of us there. On weekends, my father would take me down to the beach at night. This was in the early 40s. He had a special pass to get over the bridge. And back then, the lights on the headlights of the cars always had a slit. In other words, you could not have a full headlight. So he would tape off and have just a slit enough to go driving over to the beach. We would sit there on the boardwalk and watch the submarines hit our freighters out there in the Gulf Stream. You can see the fire start, okay? Really happened, really happened. Years went by and I used to go down to the beach with my dog. And where the Diplomat Hotel is, it was all sea grape trees, all right? No construction, no buildings. And we used to go play hide and go seek. Hide and go seek. That's what Victor wants to hear about. Well, believe it or not, my dog and I knew how to play hide and go seek. And I would say, now you go down there and don't turn around till I call you. So she would walk down there and every once in a while she'd turn around. And I said, no, no, no. So I'd go up into the sea grapes and I'd throw the leaves over me and I would stay quiet. And then I would whistle. She would flip around and go back and forth on the beach, back and forth. She knew where I was, but she wasted time. And she'd come up to me and go, ah, you know? Well, this one time that I got in there, I found me a bag of electronic parts, all German.
Oh, wow.
All German. They had gotten to our beach and somehow either to be picking it up or dropping it off. I secured it, brought it home to my father, and my father brought it down to Chief Phil Thompson, Chief of Police. And he said that's real German stuff that was being planted there. During the war times, my mother and father used to, on weekends when the ships from the Italian Navy were in town, invite the officers up for dinner, good old-fashioned spaghetti dinner. This went on for several times until one time, one of the officers got a little friendly with my mother. And my father caught on and said, that's it, no more of this, okay? On weekends, I guess I was, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, maybe even younger. But on weekends, my father used to give us, on a Sunday, 25 cents each and say, go to the movies. Go to the Ritz Theater was 9 cents. Go to the Florida Theater across the street was 14 cents. And we had enough money left over between the 2 of us to buy a box of popcorn. Okay? Both locations had double features. All right? So you can imagine, we would start at 1 o'clock and we wouldn't get out till 5, 6 o'clock. Only this one time, we didn't like the movies. We wanted to go home early, which was a big mistake. We go up to the front door, it's locked. Knock on the door, and my mother comes out and says, don't you ever come home early like that, your father will kill you. She's in her nightgown. So I learned, don't come home early, right? I still do that to my kids when they were young. Don't come around here, you know, go to the movies. Not that there was anything to do, right, Kay? Okay. The Royal Palms you see up and down Hollywood Boulevard. Judd, maybe you can add to it wherever you are.
Back here.
Back here? Okay. Ham Hammerstein used to take us with the Kiwanis Club every week and go down there and dedicate a Royal Palm. I don't remember if that was planted by the city or by participate. Yeah, that's what I thought. So every week he would have another foreign country attend our meeting, then we would go down and dedicate a palm tree in honor of Venezuela or whatever it was. And he just was just solid for that. If you had anything else to do, you had to stop it and you had to go along. We also had 50 trees or 48 trees around City Hall Circle. Yeah, the City Hall Circle, and each one of those trees was named after a state, right? I don't remember if the Kiwanis did that or if the city did it, okay? Are they still there? No, gone, right? But we had 48 trees for sure around the area there. A story about Ham. Many of you know that he and Vera loved to collect things. Okay? When we would go to conventions, and we went to one Kiwanis convention in Miami Beach, I got there a little bit late, and when I got there, he got up to say hello. I patted him like this, thanks, you know, and clink, 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 all the silverware was there already. I think when you got the house, didn't you have gobs of silverware underneath the bed?
I wasn't here when they took
Yeah, yeah. And one more thing about Ham was that he was a pilot in World War I. And if you ever looked at him closely, you could see one of his ears was clearly bitten out, okay? Part of it bitten out. And I said to Ham, I said, how the hell did that happen? He says, well, I was a pilot in World War I. I was flying an open pilot machine, airplane, and I was fighting the Red Baron. And we were shooting at each other, and we both got damaged where we had to bail out. We bailed out, and coming down in the parachute, we came into each other and we started fighting. He bit my ear off, but I poked his eyes out. That's supposed to be a true story about him. In 1947, we had two very bad hurricanes back to back, 2 weeks apart, in the month of October, I believe. The first hurricane came in and just inundated the city with water. And then it moved on upstate, and I think it sat over Lake Okeechobee. The second hurricane came in a week or two later, did the same thing. We had water going from the beach all the way to downtown Hollywood, where the Circle is, and then from the Circle west to 28th Avenue, it was dry. At 28th Avenue, it started with an inch of water and progressively got deeper as you went west. My father had a 10-acre ranch located at 100th and Griffin Road, okay? It was 3 or 4 days before we could get out of there, get out to there, and the ranch had 10 cows, so he wanted to get out there and rescue the cows. Well, as we went down Sterling Road in a big 5-ton truck with an open bed in the back, there was nothing but water all over the place. You could only go down the road by following the telephone poles. We got down to the intersection where you know the pump station is on 441 and Griffin Road, Orange Drive. As far as you could see, water, and as far as you could see were orange groves. As we approached the groves, the water would ripple out, and from the groves hanging were snakes. As soon as they felt the vibration, they would release, and they'd start swimming towards our truck. And my brother was on the left, I was on the right, and we had machetes. As they approached the truck, wanted to get on, cut them in half. We went out to 100th Avenue where the cows were, and the cows were there, upside down, like a pound of linguine on their stomach were the snakes, trying to stay out of the water. Okay? There was one cow that was still partially alive, bitten a lot, and he rescued the cow, pulled it on board, and cut off the throat, cut open the belly, and took out the tripe. Right, Dominic? Tripe, tripa. Okay? He clipped off one end and the other end of the belly, and I remember it was like a big balloon. Took it home, and we washed it out on the inside, all the little cells, and then he took and cut it into 2 or 3 pieces, and he put it into my mother's Maytag washer. She had a fit. She had a fit. And then he gave me a pair of carpet scissors, and he told me, cut these in a 1/2 inch, 1 inch wide strips, and then every 2 inches, cut them in half, and then we had spaghetti with tripe that night. Fresh, like Dominic's. Okay? On Hollywood Boulevard, again where my building is, I used to have 12 beehives, and I grew honey, ate honey. And back then, believe it or not, you could still see swarms come around. My mother ran down one time and I yelled out, and she brought a pot with a ladle. And if you hit it loud enough, long enough, they would pick up on that, and they would come down to the closest tree and they would make a hive. All right? Then you would take the honeycomb thing and you go underneath the hive and you start taking them off one by one, gobs of them at a time, until you got to the center where the queen was. All right? They went nowheres without that queen. You ultimately had to have the queen brought into the hive, and then out of those 12 hives, I would make fresh honey out of my t-shirt and my mother's potato masher. All right? I'd cut out the honey combs, put it in there, smash, strain through my t-shirt. Then I used to sell up and down Hollywood Boulevard and Polk Street, 25 cents a quart for fresh honey. Wow. Yeah. I went to high school for that. No. When I got out of Hollywood Outdoor School, I was old enough to go for first grade, and my mother put me into a Catholic school with my brother at St. Anthony's, which is located in Fort Lauderdale just before you get to the tunnel, as I recall, on the right-hand side. Little Flower didn't exist at that time for a school. Many times we would miss the bus, and several times my brother says, "I'm not going to school today, you go on your own." Well, I had a hitchhike. And there I am, that tall, and they'd pick you up. Dixie Highway was going north at the time, 2 ways. And they would take you up to St. Anthony's. They would deliver you to the front door where the sister was waiting. Sister Mary was waiting. No, she didn't do that. She grabbed me by the ear. She would pull me through the place and take me into the room and say, "What did you do?" I said, "We had a hitchhike. We missed the bus." Well, by the time I got home that night, my mother knew. And my brother caught hell for leaving me alone. I went from St. Anthony's directly up to Hollywood Central from second grade forward, and then from Hollywood Central to South Broward, and then from South Broward to University of Miami. We commuted back then every day. And if you were 15 minutes late leaving, let's say at 6 o'clock and you're at 6:30, 15, you would take another hour to get there. We used to take State Road 9 or US 1. There was no I-95. The two hurricanes, let me finish up on that. When they would hit the ocean area, Hollywood Beach Hotel had sand in the first floor complete, the second floor partially, and the third floor partially. That's how much the water came up. Underneath the first floor was the foundation. My father would give me a potato sack. Back then we called it a guinea sack, but we don't do that anymore. That's gracious. And he would say, "You go in underneath and you pick up the fish, but only the ones that are moving." And we would pick up the live fish. The bottom of the first floor of the hotel was like there. That's how bad the sand had been washed out. And we had jetties back then. Anybody remember the wood jetties? There was 2 of them extending off there. It made no difference. The sand was still washed out. My father was interested in buying land because he farmed tomatoes. He used to farm tomatoes where Target is, Hollywood Boulevard and Park Road, okay? And he used to farm with 2 people, Charlie Gambino, not the Gambino family, and Patty Asaph's father and uncle, was it? Frank and... My father and... Yeah. And they used to farm the tomatoes there, and then the tomato business started to go bad in the area because of the saltwater intrusion. The saltwater was hurting the tomatoes in Dania, which ultimately caused it to go away, the tomato fields, and that field over there on Park Road. The property then became available for sale. It was a whole city block, okay? It was $15,000. Wow. My father said, "Dora, we're going to buy." He says, "No, no, no," she says. "No good. The tomatoes no good. They don't grow." Now, she didn't talk like that, but he didn't buy that property. But he went back down to the Diplomat Hotel area. There was 300 front feet there where I used to hide and seek. And he had an option to buy 300 feet for $15,000. Okay? He didn't go through with it right away because the hurricane had hit. Again, 3 or 4 days it took to get out of the house because of the water. We drove down to A1A, drove down to the property, and he stopped and he looked. My mother said, "What do you think, Guido?" He says, "I'm not going to buy." Again, he didn't talk like that. "I'm not going to buy because if it happened once, it can happen again." And what had happened was the hurricane had come through there like a tornado and washed out all the grape trees. A1A was partially removed, and a trough was made down along, we'll call it Hallandale Beach Boulevard, where the shopping centers are. That's how bad that hurricane was. And he made the decision, he says, if it happened once, it can happen again. That land is no good to buy. Okay? He proceeded to go over to McKinley Street and McKinley and 21st Avenue, where the Avant-Garde High School is. Okay? There was a city block there. He fell in love with that block because it had 20 goldfish ponds and a windmill for the fresh water for the ponds. And he had a vision back then, this is in the early 50s, late 40s, that he wanted to put in mini warehouses with railroad siding. Okay? His idea of a mini warehouse was 5,200 square feet. And Chris, you know that's big. So he bought it, okay? And he started to, quote, farm the goldfish. Shortly after buying it, two things happened. Number one, the water became a salt water, not a fresh water. The second thing they didn't count on was the blackbirds. The blackbirds would fly overhead, they'd look at the nice goldfish and zoom, pick it out. So all of his profit was going to the blackbirds. So he ended up stopping the goldfish thing, and he started building the warehouses. And along the way, he got sick with lung cancer, and we ended up having to sell the property. I can say he paid $15 for it. He sold it for $160, and inside of 5 years. Okay. Today it would be worth what, $2 million, $3 million more. Okay. The Chamber of Commerce. Lisa, you should know about this. The Chamber of Commerce ran the second largest parade in the state of Florida after the Orange Bowl parade. It was called the Fiesta Tropical. The parade marshal generally every year was Swanee Warrensford. You remember him? Swanee Warrensford. And one of the formators of the parade to start off with was Ella Jo Stolberg, who was an attorney in Hollywood.
First woman attorney.
First woman attorney, okay, yeah. And the Fiesta Tropical parade used to stage on 21st Avenue South, and then it would go down Harrison, rip around to the Hollywood Boulevard, and I'm not sure about Tyler Street, and then go across the tracks and go down Hollywood Boulevard to where City Hall was, and then they would disperse. It was a huge parade. Everybody that was in the Orange Bowl parade shortly afterward would participate. So that's why it became such a nice parade. The bandshell, the old bandshell, the real old bandshell was on the Young Circle facing west. Okay? And I think Caesar LaMonica, this is before me, again, Joan, correct me, but Caesar LaMonica, the orchestra, used to play there. And then that bandshell became obsolete, so they built a new one over where the Arts Park Museum or auditorium is in that area there. And every so many nights during the week, a local photographer named Walter Gray, who had a place downtown, would hold travel logs. Okay? And everybody that had anything to do that night would sit out there on the benches, and we would watch the travel logs. The 1970s we're up to. 1970s is when we started to establish T.Y. Park. Okay? The credit for T.Y. Park belongs to B.L. David. Anybody remember him? He used to be a city commissioner. And Sarah David, that family, Bennett David, and the 5 other brothers, Bob David and Sam David. And all. In any case, B.L. had a relationship with Mr. Butler. I think his first name was Ben Butler, but it was Butler Dairy. And as you know where T.Y. Park is, there was 160 acres of land there that Mr. Butler sold to the South Broward Park District, and we didn't have the money at the time to buy it. The City of Hollywood, through B.L. Davis' effort, got a $50,000 loan to hold the property until the Park District could come up with the money through the state and taxation, property tax, to pay the other $150,000. The lake that is there now, I am told, and Richard Stonoff can confirm it, was developed by Malcolm Holding.
Exactly, to build 95.
Yeah, he dug that lake out to build the rock for putting in I-95. That lake is a spring-fed lake, and it's got a constant source of spring coming up on the northeast corner area. Okay, and it overflows into a pipe that goes underneath I-90, underneath Sheridan Street, and drops into the C-10 canal ultimately. So that's why it never rises up with the spring fed. That park was designed, we designed it to accommodate 8,000 people. We were getting 12,000 people on weekends. We were overrun. Cars used to be from the overpass, where the I-95, they would be lined up to come all the way in. And shortly after this problem started to develop and people were complaining, I started out looking for more land. And I had my eyes on the land at Taft and 72nd, owned by Wiley Waldrop Dairy, okay? It was a beautiful piece of land. It was underused. He had a few cows on there just to keep the taxation down. It was no longer a producing dairy farm. And I went to him and I said, I'd like to buy the land. He said, no, it's not for sale. I said, well, da-da-da-da. And then, back then we had condemning authority if it was for public use. I think it was not even 10 days later I get a letter from his attorney, Paul Rogers. Remember Congressman Paul Rogers? Okay. Say, Mr. Giacin, don't pursue condemnation because we're going to fight it tooth and nail. So we figured that this is not the way to have good business relationship in our community as a park district. I then pursued where Grand Oaks is. Back then it was called Rolling Hills. There was 110 acres of golf course, completely finished. All the trails, all the irrigation, all those beautiful trees, a nice sized clubhouse, and it was in the estate of Chuck Sirianni. Okay? $1 million. That's all. 110 acres. I went to my board and I said, we need to buy this. We don't have the money. I said, it takes 25 cents a thousand for 5 years, and we bought it. And we have no redevelopment expense like you will on virgin land. They wouldn't do it. I continued my pursuit because our population using T.Y. Park was getting even worse. I ended up out at C.B. Smith Park. Okay? Back then, C.B. Smith Park was 360 acres of vacant land, very little, if anything, no potable water, no places to sit. And I went to the county and I said, you know, can we negotiate something? And they said no. So I started with Bob Barkaloo and Ann Kolb individually. Went to a luncheon, brought them their lunch, and they both leaned forward and say, I won't use the word, but don't screw with us, all right? You're not getting the land. I said, but it's underused. It's not being used. We need it. Sorry. Back then was contact with 5 legislators that were clients. I explained the situation, and they said to me, you go set up a meeting at the county commission. You request that you want the land for 30 years, $1 a year, and do it. I said, they're not going to do it. Do it. So I go to the meeting. When I walk into the commission room, there are the 5 legislators sitting there. So I was called up for the park board and pleaded my case. Ann Kolb was chairman. She turned to Bob Barkaloo and says, is there anybody making a motion? Boom. First motion, seconded, done. Got the land. $1 a year. All right? I left the place along with the legislators. When I went out there, I said, what the heck happened? He says, it was simple. They wanted a $200,000 grant from the state, and we told them, you're not going to get it unless you give them the land. And that's how we ended up with the land. We got the largest grant in the state of Florida out of the Parks Development, Environmental, what it's called up there, through the help of Maury Connell. You'll see a picture over here. Maury Connell, who was he was on the cabinet board with John Kennedy. And when he left Kennedy's cabinet, he came down here and he set up a lobby organization. And he was able to get us a $1 million grant to start development of C.B. Smith Park. C.B. Smith Park, C.B. Smith, used to live in Hollywood at the corner of 24th and Hollywood Boulevard, where the Wings and Things place, the restaurant is, okay? He used to have a house out there with a cellar. And I used to love to go down to the house and play in the cellar. He never wanted me to go down there, but he would never fight me. Until one time I was coming down there, I says, I'm going down, I'm going down. I would open up the doors, and he says, Bobby, he said, I don't think you should go down there. Oh, all right. I said, why? He says, oh, I just saw 2 rattlesnakes and a water moccasin go down there. I said, okay. Okay. I didn't go down there, you know. The next thing that people may not be aware of is the JCs. I was president of the JCs and made a good relationship going with Mr. Horvitz, Hollywood Inc. Okay? His company owned the 10 acres that was at the base of Sheridan Street in A1A. Now it's a park. I negotiated with him for the JCs to come in there and scrub the place and turn it into a public park. And he said, okay, I'll even pay all the taxes, and I'll pay the improvements. You do the work, which we did. We got a lease from him, and one of our members, John Kelso, was a member of the Navy League, the Navy League, and he got the Seabees. All right, you know the Seabees from the Army, Navy? They came in with an amphibious landing machine. They dropped it down. It came off with the tanks and the bulldozers. They scrubbed the area in one day, made it clean and habitable. And then 2 or 3 of the members of the JCs, we built the benches, and we built the barbecue grills out of iron, all right, welded them all together, and we made it a park. On the grand opening day, we had invited the governor. Back then it was Governor Claude Kirk. He came down. And we had a nice flatbed trailer, we had band, we had music, and we had skydivers. Did we have a skydive problem? The skydivers came over and circled, and then we got the motion that they were ready to jump, which they did. And actually when the skydives come out, they have on their heels smoke coming out. And somehow or another, the wind caught one of them. And if you know where A1A and Sheridan Street is, the power lines. They came down within a couple of feet of hitting those power lines. Everybody started screaming out, and the governor looked at me like, you don't want me hearing all this, you know, that's going to be bad news for me. So fortunately, they didn't hit the power lines, and we had a successful opening. We stayed on that property for 4 years, 5 years maybe, and then he got into, Mr. Horvitz got into a squabble with Mayor Keating over the city wells that were located across from where the Target store is. All right, on the south side of Hollywood Boulevard and 35th, you may notice there are some city water wells. That was his land. He wanted the wells off the property in retaliation for the city not giving him some zoning. And because of the importance of the wells, they negotiated the wells to stay, but we had to get off the property on the beach. And then he fenced it off, and then the public got PO'd about that. We had 6 very foresighted and responsible citizens form the YMCA. They were Dr. Henry Perry, you all know, Tinsley Ellis from Ellis, Butler and Spencer, J.Y. Nash, Bob Andreessen from Bank of Hollywood back then, Bob Craig from Craig Insurance, all of which are deceased, and we have one more that's still living, and it's Charles Paoli. Okay, Charles, you're with, I think he's still in the office from time to time with Victor. They started off at 56. They started off at Hollywood, Tyler Street, and the Circle. There was a strip of stores on the right-hand side, and that's where the office started. From there, they outgrew that, and they went into a trailer on 56th Avenue, where the city fire department is on 56th, between Sheridan and Sterling Road. So we had a nice-sized trailer there, and we conducted all of our activities from there into different parts of the city parks, because we had no facilities other than an office. We were very successful in developing YMCA to what it is today. What it is today is the direct result of the following people: Ed Foster, Bill Foster, the Einstein Foundation, courtesy of Hal Satchel and Joyce Boyer, who were the trustees, and John Sessa, Sessa Family Trucking, okay? Collectively, between all of them, I would say that they put in between $500,000 and $750,000 seed money to buy the land and to begin with the foundations and go ahead. Along the way, we were running out of money. It cost a lot more than we anticipated. So we set up a meeting with the deep pocket guy. The deep pocket guy was John Sessa. And John Sessa's mother, Philomena Urbana, was my babysitter as a kid, you know? So he says to me, you know my family, Foster says, you know the Sessa family, take care of a setup. So I set up a meeting out where Steak and Ale is. And John was there, Bill Horvitz, Ed, and myself. And I said to Ed on the way in, I said, Ed, how much are we going to ask for? I said, was it going to be 10 or 15? He said, you shut up. He says, let me handle that. I said, okay. So we go in there, we have a sit down. The first thing Johnny says, okay, Ed, how much? No talking, how much? He says, well, we need this, that, and the other. How much? He said, we need $100,000, like tomorrow. So he looks, he gulped a little bit, and he says, Giacin, you know my CPA, set it up. Boom. That quick. Even after giving that 100, he gave another 100 on top of that. Yeah. And the niece, I think, what's her name, that runs the Kiwanis riding stable out for the children. No, whatever. But the niece is a Sessa, and she is very generous with the use of her stable out there for the riding academy that we do for the underprivileged kids. Hollywood had a rec center, okay? The rec center is where the post office is now, okay? Hollywood also wanted to expand its perimeters west. And the boundaries of Hollywood at that time, I think, stopped somewhere around Hollywood Boulevard and 441.
56.
56? Okay, 56, close enough. All right? And we all wanted to develop it further west because you need the land for the taxes, All right? And the one person that opposed it was Mayor Keating. And back then he was very powerful, spoke up, and would not agree to it, would not allow it to come up for legislation. And as a result of that, Pembroke Pines got formed. And so we lost out that expansion. The post office used to be originally where where SunTrust Bank moved from, on the corner of 20th. And back then it was called First National Bank, and I think it was called Giacin State Bank before then. But the bank was on the right-hand side, the east side, and on the west side, we'd go up the stairs, and there was the post office in there, and there was a place called David's, which was part of the B.L. David family, and there was a beauty shop in the back that my mother used to go to. That's where the first post office was. It outgrew that facility and then moved over to where on Tyler Street, no, excuse me, Harrison Street, where the Holocaust Museum was going to be, okay? So the post office got developed over there, it outgrew its facilities, and then ultimately moved over to where they are today. In downtown area, I'm going to read off some names. In downtown area, we had Piggly Wiggly. We had Margaret Ann's. Margaret Ann's was started by a CPA named Colonel Pentland. He was CPA number 75 in the state of Florida. My mother used to send me over there to pick up eggs and bread and milk. And I remember the bread was 9 cents a loaf. Eggs were 11 cents. Milk was 11 cents. Didn't need any eggs. Didn't need any chicken, you know. And then there was Yaguda Drugstore on Harrison. My father used to send me down there when I was supposed to be giving them for cigarettes, okay? But my father would always call in advance and say, my son's coming down, he's not buying it for himself. And a carton of cigarettes, I remember, was $1.70. How many's in a carton? 10? 10, right? Okay, so there you had 10 Camel cigarettes for $1.70. What's that, 17 cents a pack? Okay. And then I would get to keep 30 cents left over. Okay. Curtis Hale, anybody remember that name? If you go to the post office, you'll see a plaque. Curtis Hale was the first real good postmaster in the city of Hollywood, and the government recognized him for that. In the 70s, the CRA got started as a result of the development of the Sears Mall, which is the Target property. Businesses were moving out of downtown into the Sears Mall area, and as a result of that, the city gave the blessings to forming the CRA, Community Redevelopment Authority, which Lisa is deeply involved in, and successfully. I was on the board at the time, and we had taxation authority. I think the first $300,000 we were going to get, everybody said, what are we going to do with it? I says, well, I would like to see $200,000 of it used for a D8. Everybody says, what the hell's a D8? I says, D8 is the largest Caterpillar tractor you could buy at the time, and I want to place it on the corner where Hobby Lobby was. That's the 21st Avenue and Hollywood Boulevard, and go east to where Wesson's or Morningstar's is. It was Wesson's Jewelry. Tear out the whole city block there, okay, and level it and turn it into a cooperative condominium shopping area where I think there was like 6 or 8 property owners in that whole city block, between the bank owning so much of it. And what we would do is condominiumize it, meaning that the landowners would get a piece of the overall package if they wanted to, and if they didn't want to, we would buy them out. Didn't go over very big, because nobody could envision leveling a whole city block and not knowing if what you put in there is going to be successful. We had the bank, First National Bank, gave us very low interest rate loans. The City of Hollywood gave us an omnibudsman position, meaning that permitting and blueprinting and tracking would be quickly done. And naturally, we had the endorsement of the city itself to go ahead and do things. They didn't want to do that, but along the way, they have participated in helping get certain properties around Young Circle developed. As we got one coming up now. It's a Park Place, is it? And that's how many condos? 800? Yeah, and it's 25-story? Yeah, and it's wrapping around Home Tower? Yeah, okay. Well, Home Tower wouldn't have to worry about hurricanes anymore, right? Huh? Yeah. So, moving along. On the corner of where the Hollywood Park is, on the corner of 20th and Hollywood Boulevard, there's an anniversary park, I think it's called. The city bought that for $200,000 from Hollywood Inc. Hollywood Inc. at the time had a string of stores. On the ground floor, and that corner was called Richard's 5 and 10 cent store, where you could go in there, and if you wanted one washer, you could buy a washer for 2 cents, not have to buy a dozen of them like they do at Home Depot. Hollywood Inc. had their offices upstairs. The key players there was Bill Horwitz and Stanley Beckerman. Okay, tough guys, especially Beckerman. Further east was Betsy and Billy's. And I don't remember the next one over where the men's store was, okay? Irving Berlin's, right. Next to that was a stairway. And underneath that, next to the stairway was a soda shop, I don't know, Woolworths or whatever. But upstairs was a bowling alley, okay? Upstairs was a bowling alley where Doug Kaplan's offices are upstairs. And I used to set duck pins back then. You know, the duck pins were the little things, and the balls were much smaller. And I remember we would set the pins. And we didn't have anything to push down to make the pins come up. We would just have to set them. And as soon as they were set, we had to jump up on the windowsill to get out of the way of the ball. You know? And actually, all that noise from upstairs was transferring downstairs. So when there was bowling going on, the downstairs was impossible to stay and eat in. The rest of that side of the street had Woolworths, and then at the end where Whiskey Tango Outdoor is was a place called Sig's Waffle House. It was the place to go on a Saturday night, even Friday and Sundays, for the pancake, for the waffles and the ice cream. Okay, sort of like Giacin's is noted for. And then on the other side of the circle where Mamma Mia's is was McWilliams Ice Cream Parlor. And a lot of the kids from high school, we would all go over there and get our milkshakes and whatever. And when I was building my house, I had this obsession that I wanted to have stock certificates on my bar ceiling, okay? And you couldn't easily get them. So I wrote to Action Line. I said, can you help me locate stock certificates? I get a call one day. It says, Mr. Giacin, you want stock certificate? Yes, sir. He said, you be over here tonight at 7 o'clock. I says, well, who's calling? He said, you be over here, blah, 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 blah. So I go over there, and he's sitting in a chair. And he sets me down. He says, you're Mr. Giacin? I says, are you the Bobby Giacin? I said, yes. You're the Bobby Giacin who used to work for me? I said, yes. He says, you're the one that made the 15-cent milkshakes, and you got 10 cents more out of into your pocket? I said, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And so he says, here's a batch of stock certificates. He gave me a 30, 40 oil and gas and so forth. To this day, I don't know if they're still good, okay? Other places downtown, okay? We all remember the Fowler's Restaurant, okay? You go in there for $3.25, you could have a 4 or 5 course dinner, right? Yeah, that's right. And then along that same area was a place called the Gourmet Restaurant, okay? And the Gourmet also was owned by the Kaufman, the husband and wife. They ran the place. And during the summertime, I think they shut it down like most of the businesses did downtown. Melina, most of the places would shut down during the summertime for a few weeks, right? Because the business was dropped off so much. There was the Coral Rock Restaurant. Coral Rock, made of coral rock on the circle, sort of like the Gourmet place. And then there was a gas station, the Standard Oil gas station, which is the vacant property on the southwest corner of the circle. Okay. We also had Tropical Cafe downtown. We had Tim's Bar, Polly Davis, Whale of the Tail, Hobby Lobby, Melody Music, Vogue Room, The Detroiter, The Rainbow Grill, The Melody Lounge, Walter Gray's Photo, Melina's, Jack's Slack Shop, Lee's Men's Store, Lou J's, and Wesson's Jewelry, Betsy Billy. We had 5 drugstores downtown. All right, Breedings, Yaguda's, Cox, Iris, and then we had Woolworth, and actually we had 2 theaters, the Ritz and the Florida.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Melina's is still there.
Yes, yes, yes. Still surviving with all those nice little girly things in the window. I love it when I go by there. Makes me feel young again. White Castle Restaurant, who remembers that one? Where was it located? Tyler Street, right? 11 cents for a hamburger that you could not resist, right? With the chopped up onions on it, huh? Yeah. Who remembers Moy's? Of course, the Moy family, all right. And then Dania, what did we have that Dania was famous for? Jackson's. And what else? Well, the tomato fights, yes. Yeah, Grandpa's. But we also had a thing called the Viking Restaurant. Do you remember the Viking Restaurant, anyone? The Viking Restaurant. The Viking Restaurant had an ice skating rink down in the middle. Okay. Huh? And La Cordon Bleu. Okay. A quick story on La Cordon Bleu. The La Cordon Bleu used to be where the big banyan tree is. As you go through Dania, where the big power lines go across, on the right-hand side was Ross Allen's Serpentarium. Okay, he had snakes and all the animals. That's where all the monkeys came from that are out that area now. He let loose all the monkeys, all right, because he got condemned for the power lines. But across the street was the huge banyan tree. Okay, and right next to it was the place called Le Cordon Bleu. It was a $9.95 dinner. It was a lot of money, you know. Well, there's a doctor here in town that was a real mischievous guy. His name was, yeah, I won't say it right now. But when we would go to dinner there, one of his greatest things he used to do is go over to the men's room and ladies' room, and he'd switch the signs. Bill Watkins, all right, Dr. Watkins, the optometrist. Innocent guy, great person. He lived around here somewheres, and on Halloween, he would bury a mannequin in the ground, a part of it, with the arm out, with the glove saying, "Help! Help me!" Okay. Across the street from my office building, there was a little putt-putt golf course, and it was run by a guy we nicknamed Tiny. Tiny was 7'6". It was a 9-hole putt-putt golf course. It stayed open until 9, 10 o'clock. Okay? And he ultimately died because of his height. On the beach, Mike Crest's. Who remembers Mike Crest's restaurant? On A1A. There was Mike Crest's, the Gold Coast, Joe Sonkins, the Bamboo Bar on Giacin and the Boardwalk, and Scotty's. Scotty's was owned by the Dietz family, the sister and 2 brothers. And along the way, the Hollywood Historical Society was formed and established, I believe, in April of '74, according to the public records. The oldest club in the city of Hollywood is who?
Women's Club.
Women's Club, Hollywood Women's Club, 1927. Well, it was chartered in 27, probably formed in 26.
Formed in 22, and the clubhouse was built in 27.
That's right.
Okay, well, I went from the public records. Okay. The Hollywood JCs, we built that building over there in the 1960s. A quick story on that. Again, I was president, and I wanted to have a clubhouse for our club. We were meeting at Jack's or Better, which was on 21st Avenue. It was a bar, lounge, and it was not what we wanted. So I went to, first, I went to the city of Hollywood, actually, and that piece of property where the golf course is, I got them to give the JCs that piece of property, providing we built a nice building and kept it for public use like a JC building, not private enterprise. That's great. We had the land, but now we needed money to build. So I went to First National Bank, and I spoke to Mr. Hoffman, Charles Hoffman, okay? He says, yeah, I'll do it. I'll give you the money. I says, fine. He says, you be back here Friday. And bring your wife, too. I said, wow, they want to meet my wife. Oh, nice. We come back on Friday. He puts the papers in front of me. He says, sign here, sign here. Mrs. Giacin, sign here, sign here. I said, okay. We walk out of there. I got a $40,000 loan to build that entire building, which is now appraised at $600,000. Okay? And I said, Kay, I said, what the hell did you sign? And we read it over, and it was a mortgage on our home. And back then, you had to have the husband and wife, right, Chris? As an attorney, you had to have the husband and wife sign on. Well, I made sure that thing got paid off, I can tell you that. Okay? The Hollywood Shrine Club, 29th and Taylor Street, 2900. All right? Who was the big guy in that place at the time? Richard Sauls. Remember Richard Sauls? I think he was 7 foot tall. He was always the Grand Marshal for the parades. He would go down the street dressed up in his Shriner outfit with a big knife. Okay? On Hollywood Boulevard, and here I can stand to be corrected, but I recall there was an approach by one of those guys that wanted to buy a corner property and build a big house, and he needed a variance of some sort. The neighborhood found out about it and said, we don't want gangsters in our neighborhood. I think his name was Frank Costello or Sonny Capone. Okay? And they got turned down. All right? This was in the early 60s, I think, or 50s, yeah, 60s. Okay? Well, Sonny Capone was a big shot in the mafia. Okay? He got incarcerated in Hollywood, Florida, for doing what? He picked up $3.25 worth of aspirins at a Quick Check and put it in his pocket, and he got caught. And the police, you know, they put him through the hoof. Other notables, okay? Other notables living in Hollywood. Jimmy Blue Eyes, not too far from here, all right?
Next to Alex.
At the base of Monroe, is it? And the lake, Jimmy Blue Eyes. There were a bunch of Italians at the clubhouse, the Italian American Club on Dixie Highway and south of Hollywood Boulevard. And then there was the part of the Lansky family. You know, there was the Jake Lansky, Meyer Lansky, and Buddy Lansky. I was going to the University of Miami at the time, and I met this girl chatting. Where are you from? Hollywood. I said, well, I'm from Hollywood. She says, well, can't we get together and cut down on the travel expense? I said, yeah, no problem. So I would come by her home at 6 o'clock in the morning. She would generally be ready. This one time, she wasn't ready. The father comes out and whistles for me to come in. Starts talking to me. What do you do after school? I said, I work for my father. I do tile work. I do windowsills is my specialty. He says, can you do these wooden windowsills into marble or tiles? I said, yes, sir. He says, take your measurements. So I go home that day and I said, Dad, I got us a job. He says, where? What is it? I says, it's this person I go back and forth to school with, this girl. Their father wants me to do the house. He says, well, where is it at and what's the name? I said, I know where it's at. I can't remember the last name, how it's pronounced. I says, it's Kiski, whiskey. He says, Lansky? That's it, Dad. Lansky. Meyer? No. Jake Lansky. He says, you're going back and forth to school with her in the car, the two of you alone? If you touch that girl, they'll kill you. Don't touch that girl. And I said, Dad, she's getting friendly. I mean, there's an opportunity. Well, at our age, why not, right? Yeah. So I went there. And he says, the materials will be down in the shop tomorrow. You go do a perfect job. I did it. He come home one day, Lansky, and he looks it over and he says, great. He says, how much? I said, my father says it's on the house. He said, no. It's on the house. He takes out a wad of $100 bills and he says, the $100 is for your father, the $100 is for the materials, $100 is for you. I says, I'm not, he put it in my pocket. Insistent. I came home with the money. I said, Dad. He said, holy porca madonna. That's Italian. Porca madonna. Oh my God. He says, you're not supposed to take money from those people. Let them owe you. No, you take money. Well, that was too late. He wouldn't take it back. So, I want to congratulate Joan Michelson for her continued efforts to keep the history of Hollywood alive. I want to also thank the officers and members of the Hollywood Historical Society who work very fervently to get things done in the city. I work with them on sometimes with the financial stuff. And again, to Victor for opening his house. Very nice of you. Okay. And remember, tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the morning, is it? What do we have to do? Turn it back, not turn it forward. Fall behind, right? I want to leave you with some instilling thoughts that I always give my Kiwanis Club when we have our scholarship luncheon. And I want to say that it's your attitude, not your aptitude, that will give you altitude in life. So keep up with the great attitude that you have, and we all bless you for being members and putting up the money. For the Stoneoff family that sought to give the property cheaply, what was it, $200 an acre, if that? Yeah. So thank you very much. Any questions?
Sure.
Steve?
I have two questions. I was wondering if you had any information about that building that they moved onto the JC property that's now been raised.
That was the house.
And also, why does nobody know where the baobab trees in Young Circle Park came from?
Those are hard questions.
Wait, no, I think I can answer it.
I figured this room would be able to answer
All
that
right,
question.
the building that was on the JC property was the Hollywood Garden Club.
Yes.
Okay, that was on the historical registry, but because of the terrible condition it was in, not repairable at reasonable cost, the city was able to get
No,
it.
but I mean, why was it moved? Because it seems they built almost an identical building on the property where it came from. Wasn't that
No.
moved from Harrison Street, or?
That was a Christian Science church originally, and that was the little original church. When they built a bigger church, they sold the little one to the garden club.
Now, you're talking about the Garden Club that was at the 2900 block of Hollywood Boulevard where the JC building is.
Yeah, it used to be the railroad.
Yeah, right.
Model railroad.
That was on the historical, and that got torn down because of condition. All right, and that property right now is shallow, vacant. Where they moved to, I believe, is the church over on Hollywood Boulevard.
Well, the
It's on
church
Harrison
got
Street.
moved to where the JCs are, right in front of it, and it's gone.
Yeah, okay.
Christian Science Church is on Harrison Street.
All right, and the other question was the Balboa tree.
The baobab trees in Young Circle Park, how come
Yeah.
nobody knows where they came from?
Oh,
Or
I don't
does
know.
anybody know where they came from?
No,
Who donated them?
no, I don't know. Where it came from,
Nobody
I don't
knows
know.
where they came from.
It came from Africa.
No, but who donated?
Probably Ham Hammerstein brought it in, yeah?
Probably.
Incidentally, Ham Hammerstein was significant in helping develop Floyd Ray Groves. And in addition to him was Louise Riddle. Mary Lou Spencer, as the mother, was Louise Riddle. Okay, they lived in Harrison Street, somewhere in that area, but there was, and who was the third person that was Floyd Ray?
Sterling?
Holly Sterling?
Well, are you talking about Flamingo Groves?
Yep,
Yeah, it was him, the Rays, Jane and Floyd Ray,
yep.
and Frank Sterling, who
Frank.
was the one that knew about,
Yeah.
going for
That's the name of Sterling Road was named after that family. Any other questions? Yes?
That's not a question, Bob, but on the corner of Polk and New Hampshire One, it used to be the public library.
Yeah, it
And
did,
then after that was a teen center.
right. And then after that was the post office. That's right.
So the teen center
Anything
was
at that
west,
teen center.
the library was east.
That's correct. Yeah, there were two different buildings. The teen center was more to the left, and the lady that ran that, her name was
Miss Pat. Miss Pat.
Miss Pat? Oh, I don't remember it was Miss Pat. You know? But thank you, everybody. Glad to be here. Can I run over?
I would like to say something. I thought the speech was going to be 20 minutes. It was an hour and 20 minutes, and I told him it was going to be longer than what he thought.
Sorry.
There is no rush to leave. There's more than enough food and drinks and everything else. Just relax and enjoy yourself.
Everybody has.
That's for the basket that John is holding.
682.
Wow. Roll over there.
Oh, Mary,
Thank you so much.